Welcome, everyone. I am Diana Harvey with Van Dyke Mortgage, and I am here today with Troy Martin with Lifeline Solutions. But before we get started, I just want to mention that Troy and I know each other through an organization we're involved in called REST, the Real Estate Support Team. And this organization brings together a group of like-minded affiliates who cater to the real estate industry to help them be more successful in putting people in homes. So we have a lot of resources, and this is just one of them. And we will be doing some additional classes that we will also be recording to help you, the realtor, have a lot more resources at your fingertips. So we're starting today with the topic of unleashing your client's homeownership potential. And what I am seeing in my business is the two biggest hurdles, I should say, that people are finding right now with purchasing is getting the cash to close and having the credit. So Troy and I are going to talk a little bit about how we can help with those things. So let me just start, though, by telling you a little bit about me, Diana Harvey. I have been in the industry for like ever. So we're just going to say since I was a child. I got into the industry because as a child, my parents were constantly getting phone calls about their house being foreclosed upon, and I needed to know what the heck was going on. Why did they have all these issues? Why did they have trouble buying a house after that? And it made no sense to me, so I was looking to find out myself. So I got into the mortgage business to find out what all of this was about. So that's a little bit of my story. I want to turn it over to Troy so he can tell you a little bit about his. Troy, introduce yourself and tell us about you.
Thank you very much. So I was also in the mortgage industry for a very long time, and then in 2008, the crash occurred. And I got out of this business and went into the credit industry and found that there was a ton of need for this information. So our goal today is to make sure that no one goes through the stresses and the heartaches of not being able to be a homeowner. So that's our business in a nutshell.
So some of the topics we want to talk about today include the credit pulls, what happens after a report is pulled. We want to talk about FICO versus FACO, Credit Karma, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, collections, and then tips and trips. Tips and tricks, there we go, to finding credit reporting errors. So let's start by what happens when you pull a credit report. Now, Troy, you and I have had some major conversations about this because this is quite the thing nowadays. And the first thing you asked me is, Diana, do you do a hard pull or a soft pull? Because do you know what's happening to these buyers? Do you want to tell them, Troy, a little bit about what happens once I pull a hard pull credit report?
Sure. So when we do a hard pull, what happens is the information is uploaded into the credit bureau's system. And now other mortgage lenders will actually contact your borrower to let them know that they can do a loan for them as well. So you're instantly being shopped when you do a hard pull. So the way to avoid that is twofold. One, you can do a soft pull, and we can go over that in greater detail. But by doing a soft pull, no one is notified, and it does not affect their credit whatsoever. The second thing is making sure that they opt out so that other people can't just pull their credit. They actually have to give verbal permission in order for that credit report to be pulled.
So I usually start with my borrowers and tell them, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start by opting you out of credit right away. Here's the information. Here's how you do it. Once you do it, print the screen and send it to me so I know the date you did it. And one of the reasons I do that is because it takes sometimes 5 business days before it really gets to the point where that takes effect. So I've got the date, I know that they did it. So then the other thing that I do is I opt them out, and then I do a soft pull on their credit. I pull one bureau, the most conservative, and then I look to see what is that going to give me. This enables me to help the buyer figure out where you're at in the scheme of things before I do that hard pull. So between the two of us, we've managed to help people avoid getting pestered and possibly hacked.
That's right. That's right.
So we talked about that. We're going to get into FICO versus FACO. but let's just talk about what makes up a credit score. Do you want to just cover this a minute?
Sure. So if you look on your screen here, it talks about the importance and how the algorithms are taken or used, if you will. So 30% of your credit scoring is based upon amounts owed. So that means if I have a credit limit of $10,000 and I owe $10,000, with the way the algorithm is set up, 30% of my credit score is going to be impacted by that in a negative way. In fact, if I exceed my credit limit by $1, it can cost me as much as 100 points, and that is a lot of points. So we never want to exceed our balances, when in fact, what we really want to do is keep our balances under 30% is the typical number, but for the best credit score, the number needs to be 8% or less, but not zero. If I actually pay all of my debts off to a zero balance, I lose 3 points that are available in the credit algorithms. The next item is payment history. Obviously, we want to pay all of our debts on time. If we don't, that's going to affect 35% of our credit scoring, which is a major portion and the largest portion, if you will. That includes things like collections. If you have a collection, that will absolutely destroy your credit scores. Then you'll see to the right, it says 10% of new credit. New credit is something that I have just received within the last 12 months. That is considered new credit. And then length of history is 15% of the algorithm. The longer, the better. So a good number or a good range is 7.5 years of credit history. And then credit mix, and people get confused by this, so I want to explain. Credit mix is having installment loans and revolving accounts. So a revolving account would be a credit card, something that doesn't end. And an installment loan means that it's closed-ended. So if I purchase a car, it's a 7-year term, that would be considered an installment loan. If I purchase a mortgage, that's an installment loan. That credit mix, we want to have 3 revolving accounts and at least 2 installment loans.
Awesome. So now we at least have an idea what makes up a credit score. And of course, you talked about payment history and amounts owed, new credit, length of credit history, and credit mix. One of the things that comes into play as well, and I just included it here for these purposes, is student loans. I have to include student loan payments, even when the student loan is deferred. And that sometimes can cause a lot of confusion for people. And Troy, I can tell you are chomping at the bit to say something. So please share with us your knowledge on student loans.
Yes, so student loans, I don't have anything good to say about them. Here's why. When you get a student loan, let's say you borrow $10,000. You automatically have that loan in what we call deferment. So you're not making payments, which means the balance goes up. Earlier, we talked about if you have a credit card and you exceed your credit limit by $1, it could cost you 100 points. Now, the algorithm is designed a little differently than 100 points, but student loans cause your scores to go down 100% of the time. And I've argued with consumers and other credit people about this, but you're exceeding your credit limit when the balance goes over whatever that amount was. So if the loan amount was $10,000, they charge you interest, you haven't made a payment, you exceed that credit limit. So unfortunately, student loans, there's nothing good for me to say. And a lot of people are confused. They believe that student loans were waived or that they don't need to be repaid because of something that Biden did. And that is 100% false. There's no such thing as not paying your student loans.
And I do get that quite often where people are asking me, well, why do I have to consider the payment? It's going to be forgiven. And unfortunately, there is nothing out there that totally forgives it other than there is, if you work for a federal agency or a state agency, after 10 years, your student loans can be forgiven. Those are specific types of student loans, and that's the only type I know that can be forgiven. And you would definitely want to reach out to your student loan lender to find out if it falls into that category. Most people usually know that. They go into it with that in mind. So student loan payments do have to be considered even when you are on a deferment, unless I can show proof of the deferment. And there is some instances where income-driven deferment is done and I can use the lower payments. So when you're dealing with that situation, reach out to me ahead of time so we can see how it affects you. One of the worst things that I've seen happen though is when people do not reapply for a deferment. I had a guy that we had worked with for 2 years to get his credit squared away, and we got him right up to where we needed to be, and he wasn't paying attention, missed the applying for his income-driven student loan deferment, and it caused it to go into default, and it totally trashed his credit instantly. And he talked to several people, and there was nothing we could do to get him out of it right away. So pay attention to the deferments and make sure you fill out the applications when you have those. I know they haven't been since COVID, but they will be starting again soon. So don't forget that. Real briefly, I wanted to show here with the different loans, conventional, FHA, VA, USDA. Credit scores can be done, very low credit scores, 580 with VA. I can do 581 with USDA, and I can even do 580 with FHA. But I will tell you, with the really low credit scores, it's really hard. They don't qualify for as much when it comes to debt to income ratio. They're looked at a lot stricter as far as down payment and everything that's involved with the whole loan. So that's why a lot of times I can see with just minor changes to their credit, someone like Troy helping them and guiding them, they can get those scores up, which puts them into a totally different category. So, before we get into industry changes, I want to stop slide sharing this. Okay, because now I want to talk a little bit more about what we were talking about, FICO versus FACO. Troy, please explain to people what FICO credit scores are.
All right, so there are 16 plus different FICO scores. When I say 16 plus, there's like a part B to the FICO scoring for 16, version 16. So the versions that most people are going to use is FICO version 8. If I'm purchasing a car, I'm getting a credit card, I'm applying for insurance, FICO 8 is typically the score that they're going to use. If I'm purchasing a home, they're going to use FICO's versions 2, 4, and 5. So the difference between a FICO score and a FACO score, FACO scores are what we see on Credit Karma. So it's actually called a Vantage score. The algorithms are totally different, and they were actually designed for students in college or legal resident aliens. It's a way for them to get a score, if you will, but also to qualify for some credit cards that I wouldn't suggest you use on Credit Karma. In fact, I don't encourage the use of Credit Karma at all. If I Google, it'll say they don't sell your information. However, what we found is that people that have Credit Karma, they actually start adding collections, and mysteriously, people are coming out of the woodwork to collect. And if we get rid of a collection, a new one comes on. So one of the requirements that we do with our organization is we say you're not allowed to have a free credit monitoring system, because if you do, it's going to open up Pandora's box.
So why would Credit Karma suddenly cause collections to appear?
Well, it's twofold. They're owned by Intuit, and Intuit owns everything. So when I update my information on Credit Karma, I'm going to tell them what my new address is. I'm going to tell them what my new phone number is. What I'm doing is I'm giving that information to Credit Karma, who then shares the information with everybody, collection agencies, creditors. So it just opens up Pandora's box.
So Credit Karma, similar to the credit reporting agency, they're selling your information.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Okay.
Yep.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is, so you're looking at what you see, let's say from Credit Karma, and it's not making sense to you. And you think, well, let me just search online to find out how I can fix things. What happens when you search online to fix your credit?
Well, between social media and Google, you're going to get a lot of wrong information. Unfortunately, the fastest way, and this is a truth, the fastest way to dispute negative items on your credit report is by going online. What they don't tell you is the problem with disputing online is you're going to trigger a 001 code. A 001 code means that you're claiming the account isn't yours or wasn't yours. All the bureaus need to do is find your name in a database or the original creditor. So let's say that it's Target. If there is a Troy Martin that had an account at Target, it will meet the Federal Credit Reporting Act, which means my dispute was basically frivolous. So we don't want to dispute items online. We always want to write letters to the credit bureaus, and we need to follow the Federal Credit Reporting Act. Do you want me to go into that?
Oh, I think that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah. All right. So when we
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
I do have to share with everyone. Troy and I sat down before doing this and shared with me some of these things that he's sharing now. This is huge. So pay attention.
Yeah. So if I'm going to dispute items on a credit report, I have to find one of three things. The first thing is I have to find inaccurate information or incomplete information or information that can't be verified. So those are the three things that we're looking for according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So what the heck does that mean? It means inaccurate. If there's items that don't match, that automatically makes it inaccurate. And we find 100% of credit reports have errors. I'm going to say that again. 100% of credit reports have errors on them.
Say that one more time.
100% of credit reports have errors.
100%.
100%, yes. So if you're wondering if you have errors on your credit report, you do. And all of us do. And the reason for that is because we have human beings working on filling in information, and there can be something as simple as a wrong keystroke, or maybe you go to a football game and you apply and you aren't completely honest with your social security number because you just want that free towel that you can wave at the game. So you miss a digit, guess what? That will show up on your credit report. So we're finding all kinds of errors made by the credit bureaus.
So once you find an error, what do?
Then you're going to write a letter to the bureaus that are reporting that wrong information, and you're going to let them know that you're disputing the inaccuracy or incompleteness of the credit report, and you want them to correct or delete it. And they usually have about 30 days to do that. The exception to the rule is if you're using annual free credit report, which is a fantastic credit report to see all of your history, but you don't want to use that when you're disputing negative items on a credit report because it actually extends the investigation to 45 days. 15 days is a lot longer, if you will, for them to correct things. And we don't really want them to correct things. We want them to delete things. We want to give them the least amount of time possible to respond.
So we've talked about Credit Karma isn't necessarily the best place to sign up with, but annualcreditreport.com is a good place to get your free credit report.
That's correct, but not to use for disputes. If you're going to dispute things, you want to use a different organization. There are several out there. So My Score IQ is fantastic. It gives you both mortgage scores and FICO version 8. You can use myfico.com. That's another good one to use. It will give you mortgage scores along with FICO version 8. And then another one, which is the one that I recommend for our customers, is Identity IQ. And the reason why we suggest you use that one is because it will actually highlight mistakes made by the credit bureaus. So if you're going to do the work yourself, it's helping you with how to dispute those negative items. So it's a fantastic.
Is there a website for that?
There is, yeah. So if you go to lifeline.credit and you click on order a credit report, there are 2 credit reports that you can order. One is the My Score IQ, and we have a discounted link for that. The second one is the Identity IQ. The first one is a $1 trial, so you literally can pull for $1 and see what's on your score. That's good for 7 days. The second one is $27 a month, but if you're going to be fixing credit, you want that one anyway.
So if you've got stuff on your report and you're going to try to do it yourself, I know you help people. Tell me a little bit about how you help people because I like your initial approach. To me, it lets people try it themselves.
Yeah. So our attitude is we don't want anyone left behind. So if you can't afford our services, what we're going to do is we're going to do an hour free consultation, and I'm going to walk through with you in a one-on-one Zoom meeting and explain to you how to do the work yourself. And in that hour timeline, you're going to get more education than you would get probably working with any other organization for 18 months, as an example, which is pretty typical for other companies. So we want to make sure that what you don't do is use one of these other credit repair companies that are in it to make money long term. A lot of companies, not all, but a lot of companies will dispute 3 items at a time. In reality, you can dispute up to 25 items at a time without it being considered frivolous activity. So our goal is to get that customer qualified as fast as possible, not to make as much money off of them as possible.
And I will tell you from the lending perspective, there's a lot of people that I see stuck with these credit repair companies and they literally are like a year and a half, 2 years. And in the meantime, their credit's a mess because of the way they're doing everything.
Right.
So are there any other tips that you could give people on little things they can do to help with their credit, to fight something that's wrong?
Yeah, so several tips. One thing is making sure that all our payments are on time, but also beating the interest cycle. And what I mean by that is, let's say that my payment is due on the 15th of every month. I want to make 2 payments. The first payment I'm going to make would be maybe half of that normal payment on the 1st, and then the second half of that payment on the 15th. What happens is I beat the interest cycle. So all credit cards are designed on a 12-month pay period. What I have told people that they can do is make additional payments every month. And by doing that, you can never physically go late on a credit card, which is awesome. And you may have noticed in the past that if you've made all your payments on time or paid early, in the month of December, they'll say, hey, we want to give you a month off. It's not because they're being nice, it's because you're beating their interest cycle. They don't want you to beat the interest cycle. They want as much interest off of you as possible.
So explain that one more time.
All right, so let's say that I have a credit card and my monthly bill is due on the 15th of every month. There's going to be a 12-month pay period each year, which makes common sense. If I make a payment on the 1st of the month and then a second payment on the 15th, even though I didn't make the full payment in both payments, I've only made one total payment. Because I beat that interest cycle, it's going to show as 2 payments made during that payment cycle. If I continue that throughout the year, at the end of the year, let's say December comes around and I can't afford to make my payment because I spent too much money Christmas shopping, which is a thing, believe it or not. If I miss that payment, I won't go 30 days late because I've already met that 12-month billing cycle. So that is one way to do it. The other thing is you're beating the interest cycle. Now, there are some credit card companies that won't accept your payment early or they'll hold the money, which is nonsense, but that is a reality. Yeah, it happens.
Bad companies, bad.
But most companies are going to accept your payment immediately. And with the mobile apps that we have, we can actually see when the payment goes in, and you'll notice that your minimum payment might even go down because of the fact that you're beating the interest cycle. I would never encourage anyone to make their minimum payment. Always make more than the minimum payment, because if you don't, even if I only charge $1,000, if I make the minimum payment, it's going to take me 45 years to pay that thing off, and that's without charging any additional funds. So we don't want to make minimum payments. It's not a good deal for anyone.
So when you're trying to get things off your credit, we have the ability to petition the creditor and ask them to remove something. And I believe you said they have 30 days to respond?
Yes, that's correct. So we want to dispute directly to the credit bureaus in most cases. If it's a late payment, that's how we want to do it. If it's a collection, that's a different story.
Oh, okay. So let's talk a little bit about collections.
Yeah, so there's a lot of credit organizations that will tell you do not talk to collection agencies. If you get a letter in the mail that says you have a collection and this collection agency wants to collect from you, the first thing you want to do is you do want to call them and you want to let them know that you're disputing the information, because it's $1,000 fine if they don't put it in dispute. You want to let them know that you want a copy of your original signature with the original company, copy of all payments made from you to that original company, and then proof that they purchased the debt or that they were assigned the debt with an electronic signature. Now, the credit collection agency has to give you that information, and if they don't, they have to remove it within 30 days.
That was a lot of information.
Yeah,
They have to provide a lot of information.
they sure do. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll send you a snapshot that they can pull off of public records. That is not accurate. That doesn't work. So we do that. We also work with attorneys. So in the event that the bureaus don't follow the laws or the collection agencies don't follow the laws, we have a way of making them follow the law.
Gee, and they occasionally don't follow the law.
That is true. Occasionally, or a lot of the time. Correct.
Well, when no one's pressuring them to do the right thing,
Right.
it's easy to let it slide.
That's right.
Okay, so we talked about collections. We talked about how to beat the interest on your credit cards. We talked about some tips of recognizing inaccuracy on your credit report. Is there anything else people should look out for when it comes to credit?
One of the things that happens all the time, especially with student loans, which was the first subject we got into, student loans are notorious for saying that you've been on time forever, and then all of a sudden you have a 90-day late, and then you're on time again. I can't explain to you why they do that, but that's physically impossible. I can't be on time this month and then next month go 90 days late. That's physically impossible. And I see that all the time on the credit report. So that's one thing you really want to look for if you have student loans. Again, I can't explain to you why they do that, but anything government-based is difficult to be accurate for whatever reason.
So in that situation where, like the guy was mentioning to you, didn't fill out his application for deferment, and what if I don't remember, but what if at that point they just suddenly said he was 90 days late because he didn't do the deferment? What would happen in that instance?
Well, if it was 90 days, if they just went to a 90-day late, we can have that deleted because it's inaccurate information. Remember, it has to be accurate, complete, and verifiable. And they can't do any of those three things. They can never verify it. It's certainly not accurate. So that would be the way that you would dispute that information. If they do it correctly though, so let's say that you went 30 days and then you went 60 days and then you went 90 days, if it's accurate, and there's nothing anyone's going to do to get rid of that information.
So in that situation, if he didn't apply and it was not, went 30 days and then showed one late 30 days, one late 60 days, one late 90 days, that's okay. But if the other extreme happened where they showed he was on time and all of a sudden 90 days late, that's an issue.
That's correct.
Got it.
Yep. And one other thing, when it comes to credit, everything is negotiable. Sometimes you have to go to the original creditor, but I have had customers that have been legitimately late on an auto payment or on a credit card or on a student loan, and they've gotten in contact with those original creditors, and those original creditors have worked with them. But you have to be polite when you're doing that, and you're really asking them for their help. You're not demanding, you're not telling them they're in the wrong, you're asking for help in those situations.
It's amazing. You get a lot farther with honey. Yeah.
That's true.
So I had a guy ask me just today, as a matter of fact, he said, I have a collection because of a car that I turned back in. It's a $12,000 collection. And the collection company came to me and said, we will offer you $7,000 on a payment plan. And he said, what do you think about that? And I said, really? Tell me what you think about that.
All right. So if the account was a charge-off account, which is typically what happens, then a collection agency will pick that information up and they will try to collect on you. If they're going to negotiate, the first thing I want to know is, do they own the debt? Because if they don't and I pay them, I just wasted valuable money on something that didn't do me any good. So I want to find out, do they own the debt? In other words, did they purchase the debt from the original creditor? If it was a charge-off and that charge-off says zero balance, I guarantee you they did not pick up that charge-off. They got that information from Credit Karma, who, by the way, according to Google, doesn't sell your information. Very important that I state that. So you don't want to make an arrangement with anyone unless they're going to remove it from the credit report. And I deal with this every day where someone will have a charge off. And I've seen where people think they're doing the right thing. The date of last activity was 5 years ago, and they feel as though they want to make things right. They want to pay the debts that they owe. So they go and they pay money on a charge off account. And now it shows as settled for less than full balance, and it refreshes the date of last activity. And now that negative item is going to be on there another 7 years. So they actually hurt themselves, and the credit scores drop because now it shows that there's a new negative charge off account that was paid for less than full balance. So you really don't want to do that without doing research to find out, is it even legal, first of all? And there's a lot of times where customers will be served paperwork, and that paperwork is bogus. So it's very, very important that you do your research.
There's so much involved when it comes to credit, and there's so many ways for people to be abused,
Yes.
taken advantage of. The one thing I really appreciate with using a company like you to handle the credit things is not only is it done, but it's done right. I've dealt with people a lot of times because I've got the simulators you've got where I can say, okay, you just need to come up, pay this off, but have them delete it from your report. And I'm amazed how many times they're told that's going to happen and it doesn't.
Right, right. Yeah, so anytime that I have an agreement that something's going to be deleted, I have to get it in writing. It can be an email, but that's a binding contract. Also, another thing you can do is write on your endorsement line on a check. By cashing this check, you're going to remove this from my credit report. That's a binding contract.
Ooh.
That's why a lot of companies don't want to cash that check, because if they don't own the debt, they can't delete the debt. So if someone says, yeah, we can't do that, we can't delete it, then they don't own it.
So you've given us a lot of good tips, a lot of tricks. Tell me though what you do and how you can help people if they say, I can't deal with this, I need somebody else to help me.
Yeah, so when that happens, then we have them sign a contract with us, giving us, a third party, the ability to dispute on their behalf. Right now, we're finding that TransUnion, if you put in a US code in your letters, they're going to respond with, we believe a third party is doing the work for you, because most people aren't going to do the research. And that's true. It's usually done by a third party. But we want to make sure that you are doing everything legally and ethically. And that's the most important thing. So if you decide that you want to use our services, every price is going to vary depending on how much work needs to be done. But I can tell you this, we are a third the price of 99% of companies out there.
I know your story, and I know what you personally have gone through, and I know some of the people you've worked with. And that is one of the things that I have to say, I'm very impressed with how your goal is to get people back on track as quickly as possible. And that is so important because you can drag it on forever or you can get it done and move on.
Right, right.
So I really appreciate that. Stephanie, did you have any questions for Mike? Okay. I didn't see anything come through from anyone else either. So I think we handled all the questions as far as the credit goes. Now I want to talk just a little bit about the cash aspect of everything. And let me just see if this will pull up my slideshow. There we go. I wanted to mention some of the things that are happening payment-wise or down payment-wise with the down payment assistance programs. There is a lot of changes going on. I know a lot of people have heard there's been changes with the new LLPA, inflation's tapering, rates are starting to soften. But there have been so many program changes and things that have happened in the last 12 to 18 months that we've never seen before, along with the lack of inventory. So we've got a unique set of circumstances on our hands when it comes to dealing with the market. The biggest program out there that I absolutely love for down payment assistance is Hometown Heroes. It has been a great program, but it limited people way more than we thought it was going to. We thought there were a whole lot of other people that were going to qualify that now do not. But starting July 1, they are making some changes to the program. One of the things is they are talking about doing a minimum down payment assistance of at least $10,000, up to 5% of the loan amount to a maximum of $35,000. So that's going to give people a lot of extra money to deal with. The income limit is right now 100%, 150% of the average median income. It's going to continue at that, but the average median income is increasing. That will be out in July as well. Credit needs a minimum score of 640. So this was why I was mentioning on a lot of those programs, they'll take a lower score, but if you can get your score up, you can get added benefit. So 640 for single family homes, but if you're looking at manufacturing housing, I got to get you up to 680. So debt to income ratio also, when I go above 45 to 50%, then the credit scores, that comes into a big factor. Again, I may need to get that credit score up to 680 so that I can get you a higher debt to income ratio. Oh, the other thing, and this is the big factor that's changing with the Hometown Heroes, is they are changing from frontline emergency workers, teachers, and military to people that are working for a Florida-based employer. So Van Dyke Mortgage has a brick and mortar shop right here. We are a Florida employer. If you work for us, you work out of this office, even though they're not here right now, they would qualify for the program. So that's going to open up to a lot more people, and I'm so excited about that. I think I mentioned income limits are changing, debt to income ratio, all of that fancy stuff. The other thing I wanted to point out is this is a visual example of what is called the LLPAs, or loan level price adjustments. And this is something that has happened in our industry, and where you see the red is people that have been negatively impacted, and where you see the green, people that have been positively impacted. And basically the idea from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac was to enable more people to qualify. People with lower credit scores, I got to tell you, we're getting hit brutally with these loan level price adjustments. But to adjust those, they raise them for other people. And that's where some of this qualifying is also becoming an issue. But I will tell you, if you look down at that bottom chart where it says DTI greater than 40%, there's a long red line there, they've already eliminated that one. And that was from the Mortgage Bankers Association doing a big campaign going, guys, you don't realize, you thought this made sense, but you're killing 90% of the people. So I mention that because if you had somebody that maybe wasn't qualifying 30 days ago, bring them back to the table. Bring them back, because some of these changes are going to affect them in a positive way, and they are going to be able to qualify. So I just wanted to mention some of the things that have been changing and happening in the market that I think are actually going to have some positive impacts and going to allow us all to get more people into houses. Anybody have any questions? I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so.
I think
Okay.
everyone's numb.
Everyone's numb. Okay. Well, Troy, I thank you so much for taking your time to come into the office and talk to us about credit,
You bet.
and make yourself available.
Thank you
Again,
for the invite.
Tell everybody who you are, your contact information.
Yeah, so my name is Troy Martin. I'm with Lifeline Credit Solutions. Our contact information, the website is lifeline.credit. You can also reach me on my cell phone, 253-606-3009.
One more time?
Phone number is 253-606-3009.
And I am Diana Harvey, Van Dyke Mortgage, mortgage advocate, helping get more people in homes by coming up with great programs. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you. Oh, before I forget, we're going to be doing these monthly with some other members of our rest group. So we will see you next month. right here. Bye, guys.